Set the World on Fire record from 1993. That album was a very melodic record. That had hard rock and some commercial hard rock on it, mixed with heavy metal and a tiny bit of thrash metal. So it wasn't a really heavy record. That's what Annihilator has done. We've done some thrash records, speed metal, you know, with a bit of punk or something. We've done some more hard rock and humorous, laid back, melodic stuff, ballads, love songs, hate, you know, whatever. One of the songs that, along with Phoenix Rising, one of the songs that gets a lot of comments from people that are not into the heavy music that people really liked was a song I wrote that I guess, again, I write songs for myself, not for fans or other people. It's just something I do for myself, and I hope the heck that people like it or like the songs. Depression was a subject I would touch on either directly over the years or just indirectly. And Sounds Good to Me was kind of a bit of both. And it was a year after I guess I'd written that song about a year after I had first realized I had a problem with alcohol, drinking too much of it, that was the problem, and not being able to stop. I had quit for a few years and then restarted for a few years and then finally quit in '99. But at that time, that was the first time when I was writing that record that I knew I had a problem and I was clean. And when you have, at least in my case, when you have been drinking for quite a few years at that point and a lot of booze, when you stop, it means your brain and your body have to deal with things, whether they're from the past or whether they're just things right now, like your brain is messed up from the booze or whatever, or depression that you had before. Maybe you were depressed and that's why I started, who knows, right? But it became a question or a problem of, wow, I quit drinking and now I'm depressed. So that song kind of came out of that depression, but it was short-lived. It was only a few months where I felt really, really crappy, and then I just kept busy and kept trying to get better and started exercising and eating better. But the song was more to cheer myself up. It was a statement. It was trying to say, you know, everyone goes through bad times and problems. Try not to let them get to you. When you're feeling down, just go off into your own world. Keep busy. Dream of good things, just positive things. A very non-heavy metal subject, but again, a lot of people seem to like that song and request it a lot in our live set. We don't play it very often in our live set because most people want to hear the hard rock and the metal stuff and thrash, but it's a song that we're very proud of, and it's called Sounds Good to Me.
Me, ooh.
1993, we'd finished touring and releasing a record called Set the World on Fire. That was the time we jumped from Roadrunner Records to Sony, but it was also, which was supposedly a good thing to go from an independent to a major label at the time, but it was also a bad time in the sense that traditional heavy metal and thrash metal lost its strength as far as in the music business. Around 92, 93, when a lot of the Seattle scene style bands and trend stuff came in, most North American bands lost their record deals that were related to metal in any way, unless you were Pantera, Biohazard, Sepultura style bands. They didn't really have any room or need or want to book you or sign you if you were into the thrash or heavy metal music around 93. So when we lost our deal with Roadrunner, it was a very confusing time for me. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but through some advice from a manager and a friend, I tried to get record deals in Europe and Japan and was very successful very quickly getting those deals. And also with that, from the advance money that I got, when there was still a lot of money in that business of heavy metal, I bought a house and had a recording studio built beside it. And King of the Kill was born. That was a record that we had out in 1995. And from that record, my first time in my own studio recording, came a song, a sort of kind of a cheesy cliche, but chronicled my relationship with my parents. Your typical kind of, bad child. Oh, I gave away the name of the song. Rebellious teenager kind of stuff. And then later on in the lyrics, it's kind of pointing towards feeling bad about not being very nice to them when I was younger, and they were great parents. And so I put that into a kind of simple AC/DC commercial rock style song, and it's called Bad Child. Fuck yeah, guys. That was great. Being a parent and being the main songwriter in the band and having written probably 160 songs with Annihilator, it's understandable that I have a couple of songs that I've written for my son, Alex, and I think I've written 2, maybe 3, but I know of 2 for sure. The first one was not in order, but Holding On was the one that comes to mind, as well as Innocent Eyes. And Innocent Eyes was off the 1996 Refresh the Demon record from Annihilator. And I think that was a kind of interesting one musically, because lyrically it's obviously what it's about. My son had just been born the past year, so having a beautiful baby boy is quite an experience, I'm sure, for everyone. So writing a song about that is okay, makes sense. But musically, it was a very interesting song because it brought out some influences that I didn't know I had, that never seemed to show up on any Annihilator song over the many years and many albums. There was a bit of Eagles' Joe Walsh in there halfway through the song, the solo section, the rhythm for the solo section and the solo. So that was kind of a cool thing to look back all these years later and go, where in the hell did I get that from? And then realize that, yeah, when songs like Hotel California, the big commercial popular songs by the Eagles, came out way back, in the 70s, and the less popular songs, I listened to all that stuff back then, and I didn't realize that I'd done that for a year straight when I was a kid, young kid. I think sometimes you take things in, even if it's for a short time, and even if it's totally different than the style of music you're used to making, some things can just slide into that songwriting process. And I think Innocent Eyes has some, I'm very proud of the way that turned out musically. It's awesome. I like this one, Innocent Eyes. Off the 1993 record, Set the World on Fire, was a song that I had a lot of fun writing, and we have a lot of fun playing. We haven't really played it live for years, but it is on this acoustic live recording that we're doing. It's a song called Snake in the Grass, and it's basically starts out with your typical sort of lovey-dovey relationship story about, I think the lyrics are just meant to be over the top. You were the world to me. I thought that I would always be there for you. I would have climbed the highest mountain for you. So really hammering home the cliche point of what I'm trying to say. And as the song progresses, I think the person in the relationship finds out that the relationship is actually not real, and that in the specific case of that song and my personal experience, that person cheated on me, and that came out in the lyrics. So you went from lovey-dovey, what a great relationship, oh this is great, to all of a sudden, fuck you. So that's pretty well what Snake in the Grass is about, and it's meant to be a fun song, and at the same time a lot of people know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like 1993 or what? Ooh! Back when I moved to Vancouver, New Westminster, Maple Ridge, wherever I ended up at in British Columbia, the province and the west of Canada, paradise actually. But when I moved there in '87, it took me a couple of years before I got my musicians together, found the Randy Rampage, Wayne Darley, Dave Davis, Ray Hartman, and that was the Alice in Hell touring lineup. It took me a while to find the guys. I ended up, because I played the bass guitars on all the Annihilator records, I didn't need to find a bass player quickly when I was recording the record because I was doing the bass in the studio myself. So I really just needed a drummer, Ray Hartman, found the singer eventually, Randy Rampage, and then myself. So there was no need for another guitar player or a bass player at the time. But I was pointed towards a guy named Wayne Darley, who was supposed to be a great bass player and a nice guy. And I figured, well, maybe I should look into that because eventually I'll need a touring bass player. So I hooked up with Wayne, I think at least a year before the Allison record was finished. And we ended up being roommates for a little while, and he basically showed me, I was too busy in my own little studio and making music world and practicing and things like that, that I didn't really have any social life whatsoever, and I hadn't at all anyway previous to that. He kind of dragged me out and said, hey, you need to go out to clubs and see bands and, you know, just do lots of things that were fun. So I did. Once or twice a week, we'd take off to the clubs Friday, Saturday nights and have a good time. But I noticed about Wayne, he was very talented. He had a very good voice, like a very deep rock, southern rock, David Coverdale. He liked Blackfoot. He liked a lot of these older rock bands. And he had a very deep and good voice. He played guitar and he played bass. Good looking guy, and it was just like a sort of package guy. He had a lot of stuff going for him. So I tried to drag him into the songwriting process for years, and I think I even gave him credit for a couple of songs that he really didn't have anything to do with. One of them was a song called Fantastic Things, and by the way, that wasn't a slam or anything. I was just trying to bring him in to that world because I knew he could write and I knew he could be part of this thing. But the social end was more the priority for him. But I did drag him in and get him to sing on a song called Fantastic Things. It ended up being not on a record, but it was on a sort of like a compilation outtakes demo record we did called Bag of Tricks. I guess Roadrunner Records put that out and assembled it years ago, I think in the 90s. And that song, Fantastic Things, he sang on it. And it was a demo, never made it to the record. Very melodic, commercial, and White Snakey kind of vibe on that too. It also featured one of the best guitar solos, in my opinion, on an Annihilator record was actually done by someone other than myself. It was a solo on this song, Fantastic Things, by a guy named Neil Goldberg, and he was in the band for, I guess, a year or two. Lived in Boston. He was a friend of Mike Mangini, who we know from Dream Theater and past Annihilator records and Extreme and Steve Vai's band. And Neil got Mike Mangini involved with Annihilator because they both went to Berkeley, the music college in Boston. So Neil, I said, why don't you do this solo on this song called Fantastic Things? It's just a demo, but give it a try. And he did one of the most beautiful solos ever on our records. As well as did a few other solos on the record Set the World on Fire, and even wrote most of a song on there. I can't remember the name of the song. But anyway, Fantastic Things. There we go. We hope you like this one. Never made it on the record, but darn good commercial metal rock song. In 2004, Annihilator did a record called All For You. And that was a pivotal and scary record. Personally, band-wise, band member-wise, that was the year that we had our first record with new singer Dave Padden. It was a year, almost a year after, maybe 6 months after I'd moved from Vancouver area back to my hometown, Ottawa. And I left in 1987 to go out to Vancouver, and now 2003, 2004, I was returning. And it wasn't under great circumstances that I returned, personal circumstances. So having a new singer, new house, new studio, not that a new house is a bad thing, and not that having a studio is a bad thing, but new singer, running away from a pretty crappy personal life I'd had for a couple of years before that. And I was, of course, with my son Alex, who I had sole custody of. Had been just the two of us out in Vancouver, and we came back here to Ottawa, the two of us. The reason was to get some help from my family to look after my son Alex, who was only 8 years old at the time when I was going on tour. So I wanted to have family around to be there. I couldn't go on tour and leave my son by himself, of course. So my family were great enough to help out while I was gone, but then we had to deal with the music. Dave Padden, new singer. One of the songs I wrote for the album, Dave didn't want to sing, and it was simply because the song was written for my son and about my feelings for my son, about being worried, a little sad moving back to Ottawa, and the circumstances that I had been a part of putting him through for a few years before that, that were not fantastic. So I was feeling kind of lousy as a parent for a few years, and a little bit scared of the move I was making and how it affected him. And here we go with another singer for Annihilator. So there was a lot of question marks in my life at the time, a lot of guilt and a lot of other things. But of course, as with my whole life, I also have that positive side, which is one of which is the music and my love of music. So now I had the love of my son, love of my family around me, and love of music, and it was time to write. And Dave said, "Nah, you wrote a song about your son, you should sing it." I said, "Well, yeah, but Dave, you're a much better singer than I am, especially on the melodic songs, ballad type songs." He goes, "You know what, it doesn't matter how bad you suck technically on your voice singing the song, it's about your kid. You're gonna have the emotion and you're gonna convey that, relay that through your vocals, no matter how good or bad it is. And that's more important than the actual singing ability." So I said, okay, and I did the song, and it was an emotional song. Didn't get a lot of attention because I guess it was not a record that sold very well for us at that time, and it was about my kids. So, you know, the years go by, you forget about the song, and then all of a sudden you start finding people that are rediscovering or just discovering that album for the first time. And again, you find usually it's parents. Metal fans, all of a sudden they hit 30 years old or 35, 40, and they have a child. And then all of a sudden the song that I wrote for myself that meant kind of only something to me now relates to a whole lot of people. So that was a really cool thing to discover all these years later, as are a few other songs like that too. So the emotional song for my son called "Holding On." Holding on for you. One of the popular songs with Annihilator off our biggest and what I think is the best Annihilator CD recording record. Never Neverland was the record. A song that really got a lot of airplay in the United States and Canada, and MTV in England and Europe, was called Stonewall. And that was really a song that came out of me walking around the Vancouver area where I used to live, called New Westminster. They have this beautiful, it's called the New Westminster Quay, or Quay, or Key, or whatever you want to call it. And, you know, ships would come in, foreign, like United States warships, Canadian warships would come in, casino boats would come in, you know, logs would float down there to the paper mills. It was a really cool little river or whatever to see or to walk around. And I remember being quite young, and I was smoking cigarettes and drinking beer, and I was definitely not a environmentalist type of, you know, cause type person at the time. But I remember leaning over, probably smoking a cigarette butt, leaning over looking at the river, and I saw, it was kind of like a little eye-opening because it was just garbage. It was just gross, it stank, there was just so much stuff and pollution in the water. And although I wasn't really conscious of that area of life, I still looked down at that and went, that's disgusting, and wrote a song about it. A lot of people assume that right away I must be, you know, into environment and, you know, preserving environment. I wasn't. I'm just a kid, partying young, crazy, heavy metal kid. But that song really took off. It was set and filmed in a place where I used to live in Maple Ridge, near Vancouver, and it was in the mountains. in front of a nice lake, and it was shot with nature in the back of our heads. We wanted trees and innocence and this kind of stuff. And yeah, it seemed to have a big impact on our career, and a lot of people picked up on it and thought we were a really positive band. Stonewall.
It's time to listen.
That was good.
Yes!
From the King of the Kill record, again, a song called In the Blood. And lyrically, that was, again, written by Ralph Murphy. I think he's written about 3 or 4 songs, maybe 3 songs lyrically with me over the years. Phoenix Rising, a song called The Edge, and In the Blood. There may have been another one, but I think there's 3 for sure. Anyway, In the Blood was off the King of the Kill record. Let me see, sad song. I don't really know what the lyrics are about exactly on that one, which is strange because considering it's considered my song, it's Ralph's song lyrically. So it sounds to me like a person who gets into relationships and screws them up. I think that's what that's about. But it's a lovely, depressing, sad ballad. Musically, when we did the acoustic, live acoustic set in my studio, we found that was the most difficult song to play on the guitar, yet chord-wise, it's probably the simplest one because, and you'll notice in the acoustic version that I gave the guitar duties mostly to Aaron and Pat, our 2 guitar players in the acoustic set. That's because it was so brutal to play one chord and push with this finger hard on the fretboard for so long, over and over again, playing the same riff. So I, of course, gave that to the other 2 guitar players to handle while I was trying to sing the song. But just watch this one. You'll see 2 guitar players other than me in complete pain in their left hand and first finger. Good luck. This one's called In the Blood.
Come between us.
When I was a kid, I don't know what age that would be, but I took some classical guitar lessons. I think 3 or 4 years worth. My grandfather bought me a Yamaha classical guitar that I used at those lessons and for practicing. I didn't really practice a lot, and my lessons were once a week for, I think, an hour. But it gave me the basic hand positioning with the classical guitar lessons that I would eventually use for electric guitar. So I guess sometime in 1984, just before I had started the band Annihilator with a friend of mine, John Bates, I had recorded a little classical guitar piece for myself. I called it Crystal Ann, and it was just done on a friend's 4-track cassette machine. Didn't think much of it other than, hey, that's a nice little short song, and my mother liked it. I remember recording it in the basement of my parents' house, and my mother came down and said she liked it. So immediately I didn't use it. But I think it fit perfectly on our first record, Alice in Hell, because it threw a lot of people off. It was supposed to be a band called Annihilator, a song called, or with an album called Alice in Hell, and then you started off with what I thought was a beautiful classical guitar piece. So that was kind of like a statement I was trying to make, I guess, that, hey, we can do this kind of music, but we can also do this kind of music. So here's Crystal Ann. Ready for the ending? Yes. song Phoenix Rising was a song that came from a partnership of Jeff Waters and a guy named Ralph Murphy. Ralph is now, I think he's the vice president of the American Songwriters Association, I think called ASCAP, and I met him in a bar back in 1991 after a tour with a band called, some of you might know this, Judas Priest, and an even smaller band called Pantera. Go figure. So we were lucky enough to tour with those two amazing bands. After the tour, I was coming back to Vancouver, and there was a storm that rerouted just my plane ticket to Nashville, or somewhere in the States. It wasn't Nashville. Nobody was at the hotel because of the storm, but there was one guy sitting at the bar. Ended up talking with him, and he ended up being the songwriter for Shania Twain's first album and everything crazy from like ZZ Top, Paula Abdul things, and a lot of country stuff. So we ended up basically getting drunk on Heinekens and recording a couple of songs in the hotel room. And one of them was a song called Phoenix Rising. Ralph is a lyricist, and I was writing the music for that song, Phoenix Rising. And Ralph had said, being very good at working with other artists, Ralph said that, is there any subject you wanted to touch on or lyrically? I said, well, my aunt just died of cancer, and my mother is very, very upset about it, and it's a good kind of thing. I would love to write a song, both musically and lyrically, that deals with how I watched my mother's reaction and how that her sister's death affected her. So he goes, okay, give me a few minutes, and he started writing some things down, and I played him some chords on the guitar, and the song Phoenix Rising was born, and we're very proud of that song, Phoenix Rising.